Okay. Do we have everyone here? Yeah? Okay, great. Hopefully y'all had a really good ideation session this morning and that we're on our way to developing our challenges. We're around if you have any questions. But what we're going to go over today, this afternoon, is human-centered design with Ximena Acosta, who I met at an AI event in Los Angeles a couple of months back. Ximena Acosta is a pioneer in the diversity and multicultural space. She's an experienced designer with a background in marketing, communication, and research. Having lived in 6 countries, 8 cities, and countless neighborhoods, she has been able to see the world through many different lenses. Each experience has broadened her vision on how to improve the lives of those around her as well as her own, which I think we're going to hear about today. She has held corporate positions at Estee Lauder, Comcast, and Universal, among others, where she worked in marketing, market research, and cultural insights to better understand the relationship between people and brands and users and products. She currently works on consulting projects for various clients, including NBC, Gibson, Lexus, and Sony. Welcome, Ximena. I'll let you take it from here.
Hi, everyone. I always, when I saw the schedule and I saw that my presentation was right after lunch, I was like, great, everyone's going to be falling asleep. So I hope that everybody wakes up. Thank you, Erin and Mark, for inviting me. I'm super thrilled to be here. And I am going to talk about human-centered design. Coming to the United States at the age of 15 with a name like Ximena, it didn't make it easy on my life or anyone else's life. Some of the names that I've been called throughout my life have been Xena, Eczema, Ximena, Hyman, Humana, Jumanji, X-Man, Jimenez, Hyman, Ximena. It's been, ongoing torture with my name. So based on this, I was driving with my friend Christina one afternoon, and my phone wasn't working, so I asked her to please call me. And she was driving, so the responsible thing to do was to ask Siri to call me. So she asks Siri to call me, and Siri can't find me. And Siri starts saying, "Are you looking for Humana? Are you looking for Humana?" Obviously, she wasn't able to call me. When this happened, I realized that if Siri couldn't understand my name, I was thinking of my mom, who has a very thick Colombian accent. Think of Sofia Vergara in Modern Family. It's that bad. I think a little bit worse. Don't tell her I said that, please. And my sister, who after being in this country for 30 years cannot say cherry, she still says sherry. And salmon, she pronounces it salmon. So she would never be able to buy on Amazon Fresh a piece of salmon because she just doesn't know how to pronounce it. So one voice command clearly does not fit all. We have an array of languages, accents, mispronunciations, and other human factors that severely affect how we interact with our products. There are 6,909 languages spoken in the world. In the US, there's 350, and there's 22 languages spoken in India. So if you can think of all these languages that have to go into one model that's being designed by artificial intelligence, it's a little bit overwhelming. Just to give you a little background, like Erin mentioned, I've worked in marketing for entertainment most of my career. A lot of people ask me why I decided to get into technology. You know, I had that kind of fun, cool job. I was at the Grammys and the billboards and red carpets and all that stuff. And I realized that there was too much writing in the future there was too much writing on the line if I didn't reevaluate what I wanted to do with my career in the future. I felt a huge sense of responsibility to the world, and especially to those around me who've grown up in different parts of the world, to kind of like start investing in our technology and the way that our products are designed. I knew it was time to reevaluate where I had been to and where I wanted to go. On my last research trip, I was down in the South, and it was like 11 p.m. and we were in a van driving to get to one of the places where we were conducting research, and a friend of mine called me and he's like, "Where are you?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm like somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and I'm in a van with, a bunch of people. This time it's not rock stars. This time it's research nerds, and we're having a ton of fun. So it's not that different to work in entertainment than to work in research. It's very similar. So as part of this quest to evaluate, as much as marketing had been my passion for so long, that famous sentence that Steve Jobs told John Scully when he wanted to get him from Pepsi to Apple just kept like bouncing in my head. Do you want to sell sugar water for the rest of your life, or do you want to come with me and change the world? I want to change the world. I think all of us sitting here want to change the world. It's a little overwhelming task, but little by little, things like this are contributing to that huge change. So was marketing really my thing? Did I feel like I was making a big impact on the world by trying to persuade people to buy things that I myself would probably not buy? My favorite part of marketing was always the market research part. Learning about human behavior has always been fascinating to me. So my mind started thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking. And a little voice inside of my head whispered to me, user experience. Since both marketing and UX advance their goals through understanding of human behavior, it's easy to see how the two are very similar. In doing my research, I found this wonderful quote: marketing is a question of persuading, seducing, and attempting to manipulate people into buying products and services. When I read that, I was like, that's definitely not what I want to be doing. And I'm a strong believer that sometimes you find what you want to do by having very clear what it is that you don't want to do. So in doing that research, I realized that the goal of marketing is to create value for the business. Then the goal of the user experience is to create value for the customer. The functional world in the UX discipline is empathy. Empathy. Now there's a word that I love and I can totally relate to. It's something that I strive to practice every day in my professional and my personal life. UX is a user's experience on using a product, and that sounds simple enough, doesn't it? But UX design is the process by which we understand what users want and need, and incorporate that into product design to deliver greater user experiences, and that's the complex part about it. The ability to serve customers requires deep understanding of their needs, their goals, to the point of engagement, and that insight is gained through research, which is what I love to do and which is what I'm here to kind of like shed a little bit of light on while you guys are working on your projects. This totally sounds up my alley. So what an amazing way of contributing to the world. UX design begins with user research. Some of the things that you do is you conduct user interviews, surveys, focus groups. Those are like a few of the things that a UX designer can use to get a clear picture of a user's needs and desires. The findings then feed into a design and development phase to create a product that satisfies a user's needs. What happens next is more research. Then you go into usability testing, user testing to see if the user behaviors of using the product fall in line with expectations. Once the results are in, you continue this iterative design process. Doing this process has made me fall in love with products again. I wish more marketers could understand the impact and the importance of knowing who your users are, knowing what they really need, and how you can solve a problem for them. It all starts with research and really getting to know your user. We need to foster empathy in order to reveal motivations, needs, and deep emotional dilemmas. This is one of my favorite, can you guys see from there? This is one of my favorite illustrations about how this up here is how the customer explained the product. This here is how the project leader understood it. Then how the engineer designed it, how the programmer wrote it, how the sales executive described it, how the project was documented, what operations installed, how the customer was billed, how the help desk supported, and why the customer really needed it. So clearly, you can imagine there's a bunch of different opinions and different thoughts going on when you're creating and designing a product. So why is it important to understand a user? It's important because we need to solve their real problems. It's not about solving our problems. That's been the biggest insight that I found through UX, that it's not about what I think is important or what I think I need. It's about finding out really what your user needs and how you can solve their problem. Don't assume that you know their problems. Don't assume that they're going to behave in the way that you expected them to behave. I did a cool project for a bookstore once, and I don't like buying used books. I like them fresh and new smell. And I assumed that everybody had the same thing when I started the project, and I was shocked to find out how so many people it was a contrary. They loved buying used books because it was helping the environment. It was just the right thing to do. And I was probably one in 70 people who didn't like to buy used books. And that was a big eye-opener for me because I realized that It's got nothing to do with how I behave. It's how everybody else behaves. So make sure when you guys are doing your projects to talk to people, to ask them questions and engage them. Don't feel embarrassed to ask. Don't feel like you're just having a conversation with a buddy. Don't assume you've thought of everything. So always, like, when you feel like you've done all the research and you did all the questions, like, go back and ask more questions. Always, like, find out why. This is something that I love too, because these are the things that people, like, this is a college website, so it would be the campus photo, alumni in the news, like all these like things that we think that people want, and people don't want these things on a website. What they actually really need are the list of faculty phone numbers and emails, campus address, application forms, academic calendar. So they're not all the pretty, cute little things, aesthetics things that we're putting on websites. You actually need useful information. And again, if you're just judging from your own wants and likes, you're going to put the pretty things, not the useful stuff. Okay, we also need to understand our user, because it's going to save a lot of money. When you're coding an app or when you're coding a website, if all of a sudden you're working on waterfall, which is a UX method, and you're finished with your product and you realize that there's a usability factor, going back and fixing all of that and fixing all that code and recoding is going to take you a ton of time, which time equals money, and it's going to cost you so much money. So if you're talking to your users and you already know exactly where you're aiming, it's going to save you a lot of money. Research up front can help you avoid designing and building things that don't matter to other people. I see it in Los Angeles a lot. Everybody has a ton of money and they want to come up with some cool app because they want to be in technology, and they go and they throw $1 million, $2 million down the drain on something that nobody absolutely needed, instead of building apps and things that we actually do need. This is something that has to do with money. So look at the curve and the difference between when you're really having that research and all of that work done up front, as opposed to playing catch up towards the end. Now more than ever before, we need to experience the context of the user's natural environment. This fosters empathy and allows us to tap into the hearts and minds of consumers beyond a functional user experience. So what I suggest that you guys do this weekend is, depending on what you're working, go find your users in their natural context, like where they're interacting with whatever it is that you're building. Make sure that you catch them in a place that is just going to tell you information by just observing them and watching them and not necessarily having to talk to them. Context is very, very, very important in user experience. It's all about people and their activities and the context of those activities. That's a great quote by Steven Anderson. To make sure that you're out there talking to people. If you're going to talk to people on the phone, ask them, what are you doing right now? Where are you sitting? What's the weather like? What are you feeling right now? Feelings and emotions are going to give you so many clues into what people really need. Most people won't be upfront about their feelings. I think vulnerability is a big thing with all of us. So that's why you have to try to connect with them on an emotional level so they can really tell you what it is that they're looking for. Remember the 4 W's: who, what, where, when, and why, and how. So always ask these questions. Don't be afraid to ask these questions. So it's who are we designing for? What are we designing? Where is this going to go? When is it going to go? Why? Why, to me, is the most important. When they say, because I need to do this, why do you need to do this? Always come back with a why. Obviously do it in a nice way, but don't annoy them, but make sure that you're really getting down to the bottom of things. And who are your users? If it's a business or consumers, your demographics, the prior knowledge of content, cultural education. Make sure you find out everything about them. Ask them everything. So you're uncovering things that normally people don't show you when you're just having a plain conversation with them. Some of the methods that we use are interviews, contextual inquiry. Does anybody know what contextual inquiry is? Nobody? Okay. It's basically when you go and observe people in their natural environment. I did this library project that I worked on. The bookstore didn't have a online store, and it's a really, really cool bookstore in LA, and I wanted to recreate their e-commerce site, and I wanted to have the same feeling of when you walked into the bookstore. I wanted to recreate that feeling when you went on the site. So I sat there on a Saturday for 6 hours, and I just observed how people behaved, and I walked around, and it was just like, it's like you're a private investigator, like observing somebody from far away, and it's super, super cool. Then you do surveys. I'm sure everybody's filled out Survey Monkey online. Then you do usability testing to make sure that what you're designing, and guys, this is super important for your projects, make sure that you do a usability testing and make sure you do it on a couple of people. Because things that you're the ones designing, so for you, it's kind of like, oh, I know how to do this, like everybody else is just gonna know how to do it. Don't assume. So make sure that you user test everything. And also there's A/B testing. So you're gonna have 2 options or 2 variations on certain paths that you're gonna choose to take your project in. Make sure that you test those both things so you know exactly what performs better with your audience. So some of the methods for interviews: one-on-one conversations. Be very personal. The more personal that you are, it increases the user empathy and enables to follow up on questions. Prepare goals and questions, synthesize and analyze results, and ask really, really good questions. Some of those examples are: ask open-ended questions. So for example, like, don't ask, do you like to use free weights at the gym? Ask, like, what type of equipment do you like to use when you're going to the gym? Because you're gonna get a completely different response. Try to avoid like a yes or no or like a one answer question. So always ask something open-ended where you're leaving room for a lot more discussion. Ask about actual behavior. So instead of how many times do you plan to go to the gym this year, describe your gym schedule last year, or what's your gym routine like? So again, it just leaves room for them to talk about more things. Avoid leading questions. So things like, would you say cardio classes are better workout than weightlifting? Instead, you should be asking, what type of exercise gives you the best workout? Again, just driving the point that you're gonna get a much better answer based on this. I'm sorry? Exactly. The tipping point, like we all want to reach that tipping point. So you'll know when you've asked a great question because the conversation will just flow. You won't feel that awkward silence where everybody's like, okay. Smart interviews create space for stories to emerge. The moment a user shifts from short answers to stories, that's when you've reached a tipping point where the person is just like talking and talking and talking nonstop because you've been able to connect with them emotionally and they feel comfortable opening up to you. Finding out what moves people and what makes them sad, scared, and fearful. Finding out what moves people and what makes them sad, scared, and fearful is super important. There's no point in all this wonderful technology advances unless we're all collectively growing and contributing to a greater cause. This is a very small part of the UX process, and in the grand scheme of things, and it all starts with our desire to learn and to grow, our curiosity and our willingness to be fearless in our adventures and our daily routines. It's all listening to each other and listening to what we really need. So I always say before we're like developing artificial intelligence, we have to really develop our emotional intelligence. Hopefully gatherings like this, where we can so openly talk about diversity and how important it is, will open doors to a company like Apple, for example, to hire more females in their leadership, which is really sad that they have, I think it's about 13% last time I read. So while I'm very excited for what the future holds in AI, I have to confess that true success for me and for my cause will be for any of you to one day pull up Siri and call me without having to try 10 times. So hopefully we will get there soon. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ximena. Questions about human-centered design?
Yes. Okay. Mm-hmm. I've actually seen a lot of those. It's also like, what my mom thinks I'm doing when I'm going out, what I'm actually doing when I'm going out. Did I passed it? Sorry. There we go. So yeah, so it is, again, I think that just drives the point of how there's so many different opinions on the same thing. Like, I could see a 9 and Aaron can see a 6. And that's why you should always be asking questions, because never assume. When you assume, you're probably going down the wrong path. Sorry? Yes. Exactly.
So the other thing I wonder if you could talk about is, for me, this graphic means you have to have lots of different perspectives in a project, and that they complement each other because we all come at things different ways. Is that what you've seen in reality?
Yeah, I think right now I'm in the middle of working with a client who, when I met the first time with them and I started the research project, wanted something very simple, like simple. We want simple. We want simple. I sent in my wireframes for a very simple site, and they came back and they're like, but where's the button for this? But where's their interactive graphic for this? But where is the thing that's going to come out and scratch my face? Like, so it turned out to be something completely different. People think that they know what they want, and even though we did a very thorough research process, what they thought they wanted was very different than what actually came out. So I've been spending the past 3 days redoing the whole project. So yeah, so there's a lot of different perspectives, and there's a lot of different opinions, and there's also, you also go to the point where it's like marketing is pulling you one way, sales is pulling you another way, because everybody thinks that, your website is just going to have this magical formula to make everything much better. Yes.
Thanks for this talk. One of the things that I found most interesting, would love for you to talk more about, is asking why. Like, I find myself, and a lot of women, asking why. And it's a really important question because we need engineers and PMs to answer that. So how do you do that in a way? I call it gentle confrontation. Like, how do you do it in a way where you're not offending or alienating people, but you're really engaging them in a conversation to improve the outcome?
That's a really good question, because for somebody who's a new kid on the block in technology, somebody who's a woman, somebody who's a Latino woman, somebody who's over the age of 25, it's challenging when I started working with developers, because developers have this thing where it's like they know it all. Like, who are you to come here and tell me how I have to do this? So it's very, very, very challenging. So I try to get on their good side always. Cookies, candies always helps. And if I can't get them cookies or candies or something along those lines, I try empathy. I try to put myself in their shoes. I try to imagine what their work day is like. And I always ask why too. Like, oh no, but you have to do it this way. And I'm always like, but tell me why. And I kind of like, I come at it from genuinely a place of curiosity, not questioning whether what they're doing is right or wrong, but just like, help me understand why you got there, and I can help you understand how I arrived there, and let's see if we can meet in the middle. It's a very good exercise for our daily life as well. It's like, we're so easy to jump at people for doing the things that we don't think are correct, but if you put yourself in their shoes, they probably had a bad day, something probably happened to them, and it's like, if you approach life with that thinking, which is very difficult to do every day because it requires a lot of awareness, it's an awesome way to live. So that's, yeah, from like a childlike curiosity, that's my answer.
Do you come across as seemingly stupid by asking the why questions, especially since you're female?
Yeah, you know what? Yes and no. I think I've reached an age where I just don't care if you think I'm stupid or not, and it's very liberating. And I actually think that not asking the questions is the stupid thing to do. Because the more that I know and the more involved I am in the process, the better, the better that I can design things. But of course, in my head, there is a lot of that, like, oh my God, like, if I were a guy, I wouldn't be asking these questions. And we have to get over that as women. It's like, we have to ask. We have to stop being afraid of asking. And it's not because we're women, we know less and they know more. That's just something that I think we keep running into ourselves, and we keep creating ourselves. I don't think there's a lot of truth to that. And I think that men like to be asked how to do things. I think that they like to come out and be like the hero. And I think that, if we can give them that space, that's great as well.
Any other questions?
There's two more.
Hi there. So you went over the testing and the A/B testing. Sometimes I work with students that think that testing's this quick process. Can you go over that in detail?
No, I don't. I don't think anything with the UX process is a quick thing. I think that's a big mistake. I think everything takes time, and I think was part of a hackathon where they asked us to design checkout pages, and you couldn't put the green checkout button where it normally goes. You had to put it somewhere in the page differently, like you had to hide it almost. And we did 2 versions because we wanted to do an A/B testing. And the one that we thought was the simplest and that people were going to pick didn't actually end up winning. It was like the one that performed that didn't perform as well. I think that you have to test everything a bazillion times. I mean, that's my thing. It's like you have to test it because every single person is going to give you an insight that you didn't have before. So test it, yeah. So tell them, like, really get them to test as much as they can. And even like, I think it also needs to be like a fun thing. What we did in that hackathon is like we started like doing bets. Like I was like, okay, I bet you, $10 that it's going to be this one that's going to win. Like make it like engaging. Like make it like a game. I think anytime you throw like some game playing and some gambling or something along those lines, good stuff always. It makes it more interesting for students to do that. And then
Anything else?
sorry, I move around so much.
Oh, thank you. I really enjoyed your talk, Ximena.
Thank you.
And
She
maybe
knows how
you
to pronounce
can tell us a little bit more about your trajectory into getting in UX, because especially considering that most schools, for instance, don't offer a degree in UX. So what was your trajectory for getting involved in that area?
Well, I love research, and I wanted to find a way to use research where it didn't have to be market research, because again, once a product is built, there's nothing I could do about it at this point. You can sit there and tell me that you hate the watermelon flavor, but if it's already in production, we're screwed. So what I did, like I found UX, and I went to take a course, and I was one of the oldest students in the course, which made me feel very left out. I don't come from a graphic design background, which was shocking for me because, especially in a place like LA where I work, everybody confuses UX and UI, and they're 2 completely different things. UI is user interface. So basically the best way to describe it is UI is what the bicycle looks like, and UX is how the bicycle rides. So what your experience of the bicycle is, that's what UX is. So in a place like LA, everybody thinks that you have to be, it's basically like a glorified graphic designer, which is not what UX is. UX is about finding out what your users, what humans are wanting. That's why I love human-centered design, because it's not really about users, it's about humans. So I went to this course, it was challenging. I started working on a ton of projects. I would volunteer to do a lot of projects. I'm still getting up and running. Don't think that it was like that happened overnight. I'm still, learning a ton of things. That's another thing, you guys. It's like you never stop learning. Don't ever, you don't get to a place where you know it all. It's like every day you learn something new. When you're dealing with clients who think they know what they want, but they don't, everything takes time. So be super patient. I'm a lot older than all of you guys, and I'm still learning, and I'm still making mistakes, and I'm still starting from scratch. So basically what I would do if I were you, I would take your strengths and the things that you really enjoy doing it, and look at the UX process, and I'd be happy to talk to you about it offline. Find out where there's a correlation between those 2, and focus your UX process on those things. So for me, it was research and talking to people and interviews. Like I said, I'm not the greatest graphic designer, so I don't try to focus that on that much. Although you have to learn how to do it, because what I've been learning in working with clients is that it's great that I have all this research information, but if I don't know how to put it physically on a piece of paper, that research goes to waste. So I've really stretched myself out with learning Sketch and learning Photoshop and learning all these things that are completely new to me. So never make it one or the other. Always try to combine things that you're really good at, and always challenge yourself to learn the new ones that you are not comfortable with.
All right. Well, thank you so much,
Thank you, guys.
Ximena.
Thank you.
And she will be around the rest of the afternoon. So as you start talking to users, and you all should be going out and talking to them, if you need to leave and go find people, we'll help you find them. She'll be a resource. She'll be coming around this afternoon and just checking in to see if she can help you as you start working on users and talking to them and designing. So we've got a good long chunk of work this afternoon. There'll be some other floating facilitators. If you need anything, let us know. And then we'll be back at 6:30 for dinner and another talk. So good luck.